You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Radio Show, only on Financial News and Talk. Now live in studio, your host, local and national real estate expert and consumer advocate, Ron Siegel.
And hello again. Welcome to Ron Siegel Radio. This is the show with no real boundaries as we discuss current events, financial markets, politics, sports, even poking fun at the rest of the media. This is the show that connects the dots of confusion delivered by conflicting media reports. We connect the dots so you know the actions you can take, how your family or business can benefit from current events. Most of all, thank you for joining me. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day. We have a very focused show. We only chat about items that affect the roof over your head, your bank account, and anything I feel would benefit you. But before we get into our intriguing content today, please join me in welcoming our featured guest, California State Senator Josh Newman. Welcome.
Good morning, Ron. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you with us. Let me remind you, if you ever have any home or finance-related questions, I am the consumer advocate looking out for you, and you can reach out to me directly, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. Just remember, that's the number you call anytime for assistance. When you call that number, it comes directly to me first. There are operators standing by.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
While I do have a great team when it comes to developing a financing plan, a plan to save you money, I personally work with you. Even if you don't have any needs today, save this number in your phone for future reference, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. And yes, of course, we are celebrating today. We celebrate every day on Ron Siegel Radio. Some days are more exciting celebrations than others. Today happens to be one of those. We'll save the best for the last. So, it's a radio tease. You can't go away if you're saving the best for the last. Today is National Merry-Go-Round Day. Okay. I don't even know. I haven't been to a park lately. Are they allowed to have merry-go-rounds in a park anymore? With all this stuff, my kids went on a merry-go-round. They actually fell off. They skinned their knee. They lived. Merry-go-round day. Threading a needle day. Yeah, I'm not going to celebrate that one. Hot fudge sundae day. I like that one. Of course, you know me, having beaten anorexia. Hot fudge sundae is always a good one. And this is, I don't know why, Josh, I'm not sure why we have this celebration for this one, because for me, every day is National Wine. Well, it's wine and cheese. So I guess sometimes I don't have the cheese, but National Wine Day. I've got a problem with wine, though. For some reason, I've got 2 wine fridges, and I still can't fit all the wine in there. I don't know if I don't drink it fast enough or I buy it too fast. I'm not sure which it is. I think my wife might be listening this morning. She may have an opinion on that. But hey, you know something? I get to talk today. Let's move right along. Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 85 points. The S&P 500 up 7.4. NASDAQ is down 40. Oil is up $1.65 a barrel. What's going on with all these things? We'll see what's going on. There's a lot going on in the markets right now. And unfortunately, if you watched the Sunday shows, and most of them I can't stand to watch anymore, the problem is you got a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. that have no clue what they're talking about. Janet Yellen, she was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. You'd think that she would have a clue about economics. We've maxed out. We've peaked out on our inflation. No, we haven't. Look at the numbers. They're coming up on, we're replacing very low numbers with, high numbers. That means inflation is going to keep on going. Then she comes out and she says, and if you're a regular listener of Ron Siegel Radio, you know that recessions start all the time. Everyone historically has started when the unemployment numbers are at their lowest. So Ms. Yellen comes out and says, well, we're not going to be in a recession because we've got a strong labor market. Well, when things turn around, Ms. Yellen, that's when we see those changes. Although she may not be too happy on Thursday when we get GDP numbers and they say that we've already been in a recession for the last 6 months. But that's a different story. You know that. You've heard that. We've been talking about it going on for quite a while. Let's move right along and see what else we've got in the news today. You got to love it. I love it. I'm a sports junkie. I started out my radio career doing my show on AM 830. For those of you that have listened to it, that's the Angel station. So we started out, I'm a sports junkie, but now, thank goodness that I am I don't want to offend you, Josh. I'm a USC fan here. All right, so
I'm good with that.
Okay. I don't want to. I even sometimes just for special guests, I have a soundtrack on here. All right, so got the USC fight song in the background if you can't hear us. Right. Well, the governor decided that he wasn't made aware that UCLA was leaving the Pac-12. He heard it. He heard it on the news. Maybe he would have heard it if he was at the French Laundry a little more. They probably knew it over there before he knew it. But now we're at 22 states in the United States that California officials or California employees can't travel to on the dime of the state. So when UCLA wants to go to Indiana, they've got to do that with public funds. They can't do that on their state fund. What if they want to recruit? Think about this one. If Cal Berkeley wants to go play their football game in Arizona, yeah, you can't use state funds to go to Arizona if you're from California. 22 states now is on this travel ban. Can't go to North Carolina because they only believe that men should use men's restrooms and women should use women's restrooms. Anything I say is only going to get me in trouble on that one. But the bottom line is, does this make sense? 22 states now in this whole debacle that the state of California is doing. Doesn't make much sense to me, but something, I guess if you don't believe exactly what the governor believes, you're wrong. I'm just throwing that out there because I must be wrong all the time, because it's very rarely do I believe anything that the governor has to say. But that's a whole different story. We'll move right along before I get myself in too much more. I get myself in plenty of trouble. What the heck? Let's take a look at another fun topic for Ron Siegel Radio, because most of us are dealing with it. Gasoline prices, they're coming down. That's a good one. I mean, looking at the oil-producing state of Hawaii, they're at $5.52 a gallon of gasoline on. No, they don't produce oil in Hawaii. They don't even refine it over there. We ship it from California to Hawaii, yet we're paying $5.74 in California, and in Hawaii they're paying $5.52. Figure that one out. Josh, we're catching you, Josh. We're at $5.15 over there in Nevada is where you're at. Our tremendous underwriter, Lori, she came in to visit us just because she didn't believe gas prices were over $6 a gallon in Newport Beach last week. $3.95 is what she's paying for gasoline. Believe it or not, $3.95 there in Louisiana. And Jody's at $4.69. So us in California at our lovely $5.74 a gallon. Ow! Yeah. Let's keep voting for the same governor and politicians. And I'm going to tell you, I bring in politicians that I like to talk to because some of them are normal, right? Josh Newman's here. He was on our program way back when. And, something, Josh, I think, my producer, now I'm confusing myself. So we've got our guest, Josh. I got my producer, Josh. I missed the number one item of celebration this week. I can't go on without this one. Josh, I think you'll agree with me. This one's today's National Hire a Veteran Day.
Oh, I like it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. I mean, you can't go wrong now I'm going to just tell you this. Anytime you have an opportunity to hire a veteran, number one, it's patriotic. Number two, they've got great work ethic. They've been trained tremendously. There's so much there. I mean, I just love the idea. And I'm not sure you're allowed to ask if somebody's a veteran anymore. I don't know. You're listening to Ron Siegel Radio, discussing your real estate current events and the financial markets. When we come back, we're going to chat a little bit about what's going on in the world of economics, home loans. We're going to chat about that. There are spot approvals for veterans loans. A lot of people say you can't do it. I say you can. Those of you that cannot do it, get out of the way from those of us that are. What's causing ongoing high home price appreciation? We might even get into a middle-class tax rebate, clean transportation, recall reform, and election worker safety. I like worker safety no matter what it is, but we're going to talk to Josh Newman about that. And then this one's near and dear to me. So, and I didn't even see this on our show notes, but I've got a 1.5-year-old grandson, and my son just got married this last weekend. High quality, affordable childcare. We'll talk about all that and more. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number, 800-306-1990. 800-306-1990 or ronsiegelradio.com. Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the numeral 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio, your home and mortgage connection.
Are you like many of your neighbors trying to figure out how to pay off your debts so you could retire someday? Build bigger savings. Invest in opportunities. Visit rsrnodebt.com. Debt will destroy 50% of Americans from being able to retire earlier and with more. What if you could have a guaranteed program that could show you how to eliminate all of your debt in 10 years or less, all without having to spend more each month than you spend right now? Yes, that's correct. All without spending more from your checkbook each month than you are today. Get your free analysis today to see if you qualify. Visit rsrnodebt.com. Log on today for your free analysis, rsrnodebt.com. No purchase necessary. The free analysis takes only 2 minutes. rsrnodebt.com. Ron Siegel Radio is your home and mortgage connection. Go to rsrnodebt.com. rsrnodebt.com.
Homeowners over the age of 62 are taking back financial control after retirement with reverse mortgages, and the Siegel Lending Team is here to help you use it to your advantage. Call Ron Siegel with Geneva Financial to receive your free information booklet with no obligation. The booklet answers all your questions, and the best part is, you still own your home. Call Ron Siegel at 1-800-306-1990 or visit ronsiegelradio.com.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. The Mortgage Minute today being brought to you by our friends at Geneva Financial when you're ready for that next home loan. Geneva's got the programs and the products. You just need to make the call, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. S&P 500 now up 3.87. Mortgage, the 10-year Treasury, if my screen will populate right here, I will tell you that it is up 3 basis points. That's the yield. Mortgage-backed securities are down 6 basis points. That's the bond, which means interest rates are a little bit better. And every morning at this time, I tell you, OBMMI provides the most comprehensive, accurate, timely, and interactive analysis of pricing ever conducted in the mortgage industry, calculated from actual locked rates with consumers across 35% of all mortgage transactions nationwide. These are Friday's numbers, exactly what the loans locked at on Friday. 30-year conforming, 5.603. 30-year jumbo, 5.052. 30-year FHA, 5.536. USDA, for those of you in the rural areas, 5.441. And the best loan on the market for those who earned it, the 30-year VA loan, 5.198. And all that information is available if you know where to look. It's on that super secret website, google.com. But what's not there is, why is this all happening? What's driving these markets? And some of it, well, you know, some of it's really just bogus information that we get out of the media right now. Adam Data Solutions reported that lenders repossessed 20,750 properties during the first 6 months of 2022, up 113% from the repossessions in the first half of 2021. Let's do a little math study here. If you have one repossession and you go to 2 repossessions, that's up 100%, right? Now, here we go from a number that was in 2021. Do you remember what was going on in 2021 and maybe 2020? Right? We had a moratorium on repossessions. Think about it. So now we're up by 113% over something that wasn't happening. Welcome to stupidity. Now, let's go back and look at 2019, pre-COVID. Repossessions are down 70% from then. Think about these things. From 2017, they're down 88%. These are just numbers that they come out to shock people, to think that the market is tanking. It's not. Now, the average individual, the loan to value is 42. Foreclosures happen when you have no equity. We have a boatload of equity right now. We're not going to get foreclosures. Anybody that has a foreclosure right now, it's because they've got their head in the sand. They're not calling their servicer. They're not calling their local realtor to take care of it. Give us a call. We'll put you in touch with the right people. I have a real estate license. I don't use it, but I can put you in touch with the right folks. Now, later this week, we're going to get a interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve. We know the number's already been leaked to Nick Timiraos. Can't say his name. But we know it's going to be up 75 basis points. Then we know that when the GDP comes out, that we're going to show another negative. There's never been a time in history where the National Bureau of Economic Research did not tell us that we were in a recession, either right when they found out that we had 2 quarters of negative GDP or shortly thereafter. It's just the way but if you listen to the Sunday shows, that's not what they told you yesterday. But you got to listen to Ron Siegel Radio. We'll give it to you like it is, whether you like it or not. That's our motto here. We're just trying to protect you as a consumer advocate. I'm going to tell you what it is. I think I even have a friend of mine that said that one time.
It is what it is.
That's the Mortgage Minute, brought to you by our friends at Geneva Financial. When you're ready for that next home loan, Geneva's got the programs and the products. You just need to make the call, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Now that I get off my soapbox, my wife's probably going to be texting me any minute saying, let your guest speak. Let your guest speak. I'm used to that. So I'm going to introduce you to our state senator, Josh Newman. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So tell me, before we get started, tell me the generalities of the area that you represent.
Well, certainly. Let me first say thanks for having me here. So, Ron, you and I were talking before we started. I was last on your show in October of 2015. And speaking of National Hire a Veteran Day, I was working with veterans in Orange County, and we were working on a standout for homeless veterans. So thank you for everything you do for vets. I'm glad to be back.
Appreciate it.
So I serve California's 29th Senate District, and that includes all the parts of 16 cities across 3 counties. So 10 cities in North Orange County, 5 cities in southeastern LA County, and 1 city in San Bernardino County, all in about 960,000 citizens in one of 40 California state Senate districts.
One of 40?
One of 40.
Okay, wow. 900,000.
Almost a million, right? So
I have trouble just dealing with 5 people in my family, and you got to deal with 900,000 that want your time and energy, and every problem that they have is the only problem in the entire world.
Feels that way sometimes.
It's a big responsibility, and thank you for the service. I tell people all the time that I don't think I could ever get into politics, and I'm thankful for those that do.
Well, I just listened to your opening monologue. That is probably true. You probably should not get into politics.
Exactly. I've got way too much baggage.
You can speak freely that way.
About 3,000 radio shows, people know exactly what I think. So, I want to start off chatting with you a little bit, because it's one of the most common things that we hear about right now. It's probably the number one item in the news, the pandemic. What's going on with it? What do we need to worry about? Do we need to worry anymore?
So that is actually a good question. So I have served for almost 2 years as the chair of something called the State Senate Special Committee on Pandemic Emergency Response. And if you recall what the pandemic was like 2 years ago, it was moving very quickly. We didn't have a vaccine. We're having really adverse outcomes. And it was scary. We've made a ton of progress since then, not least of which is getting enough people vaccinated and through sort of natural immunity that now this virus is no longer a novel virus. Most people's immune systems now have some exposure to it. So it's not nearly the threat it was. Moreover, the new variants, although they're much more contagious, appear to be less severe than the original pandemic, the original coronavirus. Then there was the Omicron virus. This is a variant or a subvariant of the Omicron virus. And so we're seeing really high rates of infection right now, but thankfully we're not seeing as high rates of hospitalization. And again, even more thankfully, we're not seeing the kinds of fatalities that we were early. But it's still problematic, right? This is still a very contagious disease, and people who have compromised immune systems, especially the elderly, are really vulnerable to bad outcomes. So, we're in a strange phase right now where we may be kind of getting to kind of a normalcy, or what they call an endemic phase, but we're not quite there yet. So we still have to be vigilant. And my job in capacity as the chair We meet regularly with the administration. The next big thing is kids going back to school and how to do that smartly so that kids can stay in school. But kids, although they aren't really affected in the same way, apparently, by the coronavirus, are awesome conveyors of the virus. So that's something to be concerned about.
So I've said for quite a while, and I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but you can correct me, is that my feeling is that personally, I'm not worried about the virus. I feel it needs to be respected, right? I'm not worried. I mean, I can't really worry about things I can't control. I believe that probably every day I'm exposed to somebody who either has it or maybe carrying it and doesn't even know it. But I don't think we can live a life of fear, can we, or should we?
No, I don't think. I mean, especially now, and again, a year and a half ago, pre-vaccine, pre-therapeutics. There's a bunch of really good medicines right now that have kept people out of intensive care units and stopped them from dying. So it's a very different circumstance right now. And so, very unlikely that we'll revert back to, the kind of shutdowns and mask mandates that we had before. But we still have to kind of cycle through this. This is still a new virus for people, and we don't know everything about it. And one real concern is what they call long COVID. About 20% of people who get COVID will have long-term effects that will persist for a long time. And that, if you can avoid getting it, you're that much less likely to have those effects.
From the research that you've seen, I know you're not a doctor, and we're not going to play doctor on Ron Siegel Radio. That would be called problematic. But is it the more that we're exposed, could that be beneficial to us? I mean, if we don't get it, you hear about different medical things where, if you're exposed to something, the more often you're exposed to it in small doses, your body's going to build up some natural immunities.
I mean, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, so the original real danger, of the pandemic was that, a virus presented itself that apparently humans had never seen before. And we had no natural immunity, no natural response. Our bodies are actually very, very robust and have kind of an innate intelligence when it comes to dealing with threats from the outside, but, pathogens.
Sure.
And so, over the last almost 3 years, about 80% of Americans now have had, some level of exposure that has led them to some level of natural immunity. That's a good thing. But, the question now is that remaining 20%, how do we protect them? But more importantly, for those members of our communities that have, in some ways are less, their immunity systems are less robust. How do we protect them? So that, that's the elderly, that's people with underlying conditions.
Sure.
And so if we just go back to kind of living like normal, right? Everybody gets colds all the time, right? If you're a little kid, you're going to get colds all the time. But your body is used to having a cold. That's another kind of coronavirus. This was a unique new one. And we're a little bit closer to everybody having some level of immunity, and then being able to treat it like we do the flu, like we do a cold.
Yeah, something. I think the biggest, in my opinion, when in 2020 when we first started seeing this, we didn't know what we didn't know, right? And when you're ignorant, you just have to try and protect as much as you can. And I'm never a fan of big government, but I think the government did as best they could because you're operating blind. We're going to talk more with our state senator, Josh Newman, when we come back. Access to high quality, affordable childcare. That's next on our docket here. Clean transportation. We'll talk about that as well. And what's causing ongoing home price appreciation. All that and more. You can reach me anytime. Our off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com. Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, shame on you. But the replay is available. Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube. Ron Siegel, the number 1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
Are you a renter and tired of making monthly payments? Paying off someone else's mortgage? Hey, it's Ron Siegel here to help you stop renting and start owning your dream home with amazing low interest rates. And you could potentially qualify for a $500,000 home for less than $5,000 out of pocket. So stop renting. Start owning with Ron Siegel. Learn more at ronsiegelradio.com and start owning today. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
Are you like many of your neighbors trying to figure out how to pay off your debts so you could retire someday? Build bigger savings. Invest in opportunities. Visit rsrnodebt.com. Debt will destroy 50% of Americans from being able to retire earlier and with more. What if you could have a guaranteed program that could show you how to eliminate all of your debt in 10 years or less, all without having to spend more each month than you spend right now? Yes, that's correct. All without spending more from your checkbook each month than you are today. Get your free analysis today to see if you qualify. Visit rsrnodebt.com. Log on today for your free analysis, rsrnodebt.com. No purchase necessary. The free analysis takes only 2 minutes. rsrnodebt.com. Ron Siegel Radio is your home and mortgage connection. Go to rsrnodebt.com. rsrnodebt.com.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Real-time real estate segment today being brought to you by the area trusted real estate professionals of Ron Siegel Radio. Visit rsrhomescout.com, rsrhomescout.com. What's causing ongoing home price appreciation? If you're thinking about making a move, you probably want to know what's going to happen to home prices for the rest of the year. While experts say price growth will moderate due to the shifting market, ongoing appreciation is expected. That means home prices won't fall. Here's a look at 2 key reasons experts forecast continued price growth. Pretty simple. Even for a simple guy like me, I learned this in my very first class of economics at Chapman College. It's called supply and demand. Yes, it was a college way back when then. Don't go saying anything. I'm old, I know it. While growing, housing supply is still low. Even though inventory is increasing this year as the market moderates, supply is still low. If you're watching us on ronsiegelradio.tv, any of our socials, or the ABC News and Talk AM 1490 video feed, you're seeing a chart right now. It uses data from the census to show the number of single-family homes that were built in this country going all the way back to 1970. And you can see we're still way below the normal. 14 straight years below the 50-year average. 14 straight years. Blue bars on the graph if you're watching us, or if you're not watching, you can watch later on. Blue bars represent the years leading up to the housing crisis in 2008, as the graph shows. Right before the crash, home building increased significantly. That's because buyer demand was so high due to loose lending standards that enabled more people to qualify for a home loan. The resulting oversupply of homes for sale led to prices dropping during the crash, and some builders leaving the industry or closing their businesses, and that led to a long period of underbuilding of new homes. And even as more new homes are constructed this year and in the years ahead, this is not something that can be resolved overnight. It'll take time to build enough homes to meet the deficit in underbuilding that took place over the past 14 years. Millennials, they're going to create sustained demand. They're growing older. They want to start their own families. The frenzy the market saw during the pandemic is because there was more demand than homes for sale. That drove home prices up as buyers competed with one another for available homes. And while buyer demand was moderated today in response to higher mortgage rates, data tells us demand will continue to be driven by the large generation of millennials aging into their peak home buying years. Again, it's on the graph. You can see it for yourself. Odetta Cushy, Deputy Chief Economist at First American, explains, quote, millennials continue to transition to their prime home buying age and will remain the thriving force in potential home ownership demand in the years ahead, unquote. That combination of millennial demand and low housing supply continues to put upward pressure on home prices. Bankrate says, quote, after all, supplies of homes for sale remain near record lows. And while a jump in mortgage rates has dampened demand somewhat, demand still outpaces supply, thanks to a combination of little new construction and strong household formation by large numbers of millennials, unquote. What does this mean for home prices? If you're worried home values will fall, rest assured that experts forecast ongoing home price appreciation thanks to the lingering imbalance of supply and demand. That means homes won't decline. Home prices will not decline. Contrary to what all my friends over at Chapman University were saying at their economic forecast just 3 weeks ago. Not going to go down. If you listen to us, I shared with you why we still have a deficit of 130,000 homes just based on the numbers of obsolete properties and the things that are not coming to market just on new home demand. Bottom line, based on today's factors driving supply and demand, experts project home prices will continue, just not at the same rapid pace that they were. And as always, I ask, if you have any friends, family, or coworkers looking to buy, sell, or borrow on real estate, can I count on you to introduce me? That's the Real-Time Real Estate segment brought to you by the area trusted real estate professionals of Ron Siegel Radio. Visit rsrhomescout.com, rsrhomescout.com. Continuing our conversation this morning, State Senator Josh Newman is with us, having a conversation about lots of different things. We're going to get a wide variety. We talked about COVID in the last segment. If you missed it, shame on you. We're not going to repeat it. You can go back and listen. It's ronsiegelradio.com in the archives. Mr. Senator, what I want to talk about now is something that's getting more and more dear to my heart. My kids are old. I shouldn't say that. I'm old. My kids 32, 30, 27. They're part of that millennial group that's starting to create their own households, their own families. And I just heard my son and daughter-in-law talking this past weekend. My son got married, and we were chatting around the table. And she said they're looking at like $1,200 for 3 half days for my grandson to go to childcare.
I hope that's a month, right? That's $1,200 a month.
I think it's 3 half days.
That right.
3 half days for the month.
Yeah.
And she said, she's a school teacher. My son works at in a warehouse environment. They're not high paid individuals, but you talk about $1,200 a month. It's almost better to stay home when you look at your after tax income. Is there something we can do about that?
Yeah, so you touched earlier on one of your segments with the rising cost of homes, rising home prices in California. So very few couples in this economy can afford to get into that market without having 2 wage earners in that home. So it becomes very important in that circumstance for them to have access to childcare. And so one of the things we're doing that's encouraging in California is they're expanding something called transitional kindergarten, which is going down 1 year. Everybody goes to kindergarten in California at age 5. We will have public programs to cover all 4-year-olds by 2025, 26. So they will also have access to public school. That'll be a good thing. That'll take some of the pressure off of parents. But we still have this larger problem of having affordable childcare for those people who need it. Again, you mentioned people make difficult choices between working and childcare, and if childcare is too expensive, it winds up being kind of a false choice. So we need to increase the availability of childcare. We need to reduce the cost to people. One way to do that is through subsidies. And so, we've had some very good fiscal years over the last couple of years in California. So the pandemic scared everybody initially, but it turns out our economy actually did fine. California's revenues actually did better than expected. So we're taking some of that surplus and investing it in childcare. That's a good thing. But we still have a bunch of catching up to do from the pandemic. Because if you recall, during the shutdowns, not only were businesses shut down, but a lot of childcare facilities shut down as well. And a lot of those small providers went out of business. And unless we can bring them back, we're not going to have a place for working people to bring their kids for safe and affordable childcare.
So when you talk about, is this all only in the public environment, or can they go to non-public kindergartens or pre-kindergarten, or however they're terming this for the 4-year-olds, or is it just going into a public school environment?
No, this is for both. So most childcare is paid for by the end user, as you mentioned. And so there are subsidies, there are programs available for Californians who, for whatever reason can't afford it. And so, we're putting funds into something called alternative payment programs so that people who do qualify can use vouchers to go to childcare facilities, and same as you and I would if we didn't have that eligibility. But that's important to create economies of scale so that providers can meet their costs while staying open, while taking care of as many kids as they can.
So one of the things that I always worry about, and I look at these things, I'm sure that many others contemplate this, is, those people that decide they're going to try and game the system. So, I get a voucher for $1,000. I'll spend $100. I get to pocket the other 900, and I'll have 22 kids. Is there some sort of where?
But this isn't the child care provider. This is the taxpayer. This is
the taxpayer doing these kind of.
Oh, so the way this program works is that voucher goes directly to the child care provider.
Okay, good.
And so it can't be gamed in that way. You have to qualify, and then that money is conveyed directly to the child care provider.
Okay.
The change we're making moving forward. There's a bill that a colleague of mine is moving. It's Assembly Bill 1649. Is so that providers, and 90% of childcare is done by smaller providers, so that they'll have the assurance of income, regular income. They'll get paid for the full week as opposed to just the hours that a family might or might not use. And in doing that, we'll create stability in the childcare system.
Yeah, that was one of the things I learned when I was at Chapman. Is I had a lot of friends of mine that were foreign students, and they kind of laughed at me. They said, we come from foreign countries and we've got a big advantage over Americans. He said, because one of my closer friends was from Bolivia. And he said, in Bolivia, we go to school from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, 5 days a week, and half day on Saturday. He said, just by the hours that we're involved in schooling, we have to be more advanced than kids that are going, 4 hours a day with 17 breaks and everything that's going on in America.
Right.
That earlier start, starting at 4 as opposed to 5, should be helpful for us.
Should be, and you touched on something important, which is, childcare hours aren't necessarily the same hours that people work, right? And this is a huge challenge. And so, we have a lot of publicly funded childcare programs where, say, you drop your kid off at 8 and it finishes at noon. Nobody works at a real job for 4 hours, right? So people still have to figure out what to do the rest of that day. So these are real problems. In those other countries you mentioned, they typically have universal childcare, right? There's a government program or the equivalent from basically birth onward. For whatever reason, in America, in California, we've made 5 years old. That's the moment where your child goes into the public educational system. Arguably, those first 5 years are just as important or more important, not only as it affects child development, but also the parents' ability to go out and make a decent living to provide for those kids.
Yeah, that's important. And I just throw my personal opinion in here because I always do, is that one of the bigger challenges I've seen in our whole society is where we've gotten to the point of having to have a 2-income household. I don't care whether it's mom working or dad working or whichever, but if mom or dad are there to raise Johnny or Mary, we're better off because they've got that, instead of being left home and saying, okay, I'll be back at 5, kids have a lot of time to get in trouble.
I'd say that's true if life is stress-free, right? So,
right.
The real challenge in California is you have to make these very difficult choices. So the rule of thumb to afford median average home price in Orange County, about $1 million, right? So the household income has to be somewhere on the order of $140,000, $150,000 a year,
right,
to qualify, especially at these rates, for a mortgage. That's a lot of money. You're so very few people, especially in sort of at the age you might have kids, are making that kind of money. So too often it takes a dual income household to get there.
It's sure, yeah, and a lot of people I know. In my case, one of my boys was in the situation. He thought, well, I got a college degree, so I'm going to certainly start off making a couple $100,000 a year, right? And that's just not reality.
Well, I admire his confidence.
Yeah, exactly. I said, son, that's not quite the way it works. Oh, that's what they told me at school. So that's not quite the way it works. We got a lot still to cover with our state senator, Josh Newman. So our producer, Josh, I'm going to tell you, we're going to skip our Borrow Smart segment. So I've got so much more I want to chat with the senator about: middle-class tax rebates, clean transportation, recall reform, election worker safety. We're going to talk about all that and more. You can reach me anytime. Off-air number 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or RonSiegelRadio.com, Facebook.com/Ron Siegel Radio. And if you miss any part of our broadcast, Ron Siegel 1 on YouTube, Ron Siegel, the #1 on YouTube. Stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few.
Ron Siegel Radio. Your home and mortgage connection.
Do you know a homeowner experiencing divorce? Do you know a real estate reference and the divorce decree could cost tens of thousands of dollars? A certified divorce mortgage planning and real estate report could save you thousands of dollars, and it's free from your local certified divorce lending professional. Reach out to Ron today. RonIsMyLender.com. Again, RonIsMyLender.com. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
Are you a renter and tired of making monthly payments? Paying off someone else's mortgage? Hey, it's Ron Siegel here to help you stop renting and start owning your dream home with amazing low interest rates. And you could potentially qualify for a $500,000 home for less than $5,000 out of pocket. So stop renting. Start owning with Ron Siegel. Learn more at ronsiegelradio.com and start owning today. Licensed under NMLS 217037, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Ron Siegel's Home and Finance Show with local and national expert Ron Siegel. Now, here's Ron.
Welcome back to Ron Siegel Radio. Within every market, there are solutions as well as tremendous opportunities. You just need some trusted guidance. That is my message, and I will be delivering it every day on Ron Siegel Radio or anytime at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990. Hey, being that I am the host of the show, sometimes I throw curveballs at my team. So I'm just going to tell you today, just because I can, the Borrow Smart segment, brought to you by the National Institute of Financial Education. I'm not going to give you our story today. We'll save that for another day. But I like to get the plug in just for the National Institute of Financial Education, because where are you getting financial education? It doesn't happen very often, very many places. So we like our group there. But I want to get back to our conversation with California State Senator Josh Newman. He's our guest for the hour today. Got a lot to chat about. If you've missed it, well, that's your problem. COVID-19, we spoke about it. Childcare. If you are a young person, or maybe not the young people, maybe it's their parents we need to talk about. They're the ones that have to pay for the childcare. So it's not the 4 or 5-year-old. They probably don't have their own credit card yet. We might give them a student loan, though. But that's a different story. But let's get into talking about more goodies with the senator. Middle class tax rebate. So I did study economics at Chapman. I was 1 degree short. Sorry, I only got 3 degrees there. I missed the 4th. But when I was at Chapman, they basically told us the definition of inflation is basically too much money chasing too few goods. May have changed since the 80s, but that's what it was back then. And we've got this massive problem with inflation right now. And we're looking at a middle class tax rebate. I know the middle class gets buried in taxes. I like tax cuts, but the rebate, isn't that going to send more money out there to chase the same shortage of goods? So isn't that going to help exacerbate more inflation?
This is a good question, Ron. And so let me frame it. Clearly, inflation is a huge problem in California. I mean, cost of living is already high in this state, but because of the shocks to the system, supply chain problems, also the war in Ukraine, we've had a real, sort of shock in the form of higher gas prices, higher energy costs, higher costs for everybody because goods have to be transported by people paying those higher energy costs. So California has a very meaningful surplus this year. And so the state is going to give back some of that money in the form of rebates to soften some of the blow of this inflationary economy. That money will start arriving in October. Most people, families who are middle class or below, combined household income of less than, I think, $500,000. So it's pretty generous. Trying to give some of that money back so they can put it against some of these additional costs that people are facing.
I think most people that are doing well and care about others would basically want that say, okay, and I know making $500,000 isn't massive money. It's not Bezos money, right? But you're able to live on $500,000. There's people that are trying to live on, $75,000 or $100,000.
Right.
And, those are the ones that really need that safety net as long as they're working. Is there a provision in here that you have to actually go get a job or look for a job? I mean, obviously we want to have that safety net also for those who can't work physically.
So on this particular rebate, it's really about, did you file for taxes? Do you qualify? And the thinking is, because of higher energy prices, everybody can use that money to kind of defray some of these costs. The states had some other programs, especially during the pandemic, that have created the safety net to which I think you're referring. So, lots of Californians, especially at the kind of the bottom half of the wage scale, lost jobs or were furloughed during the pandemic. Because of that, they got into big holes as far as rent, utilities, some of their other costs. So, we had moratoriums on evictions, but we also had a bunch of programs to help true up those rent arrearages and utility arrearages as well. So we're still working through that, but it's going to be years before the impact of the pandemic is fully gone.
Yeah, it's a challenge because there's a limited number of you guys making legislation, you guys and gals. I'm not trying to be sexist, but you folks making legislation, and there's a lot more people that are trying to game that whole system. Quite honestly, I mean, there's a lot of crooks out there.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, that is true. So, most of the programs, the federal programs, right, the payment protection program, and the unemployment insurance, the more generous unemployment insurance amounts, they were gamed by criminals all over the country. And so California, because we're a big state, we were hit as bad as anybody. And it is a shame, right? And so, if there's an opportunity for people to game the system, to defraud others, it seems to happen, but it happens because of the digital world at a scale we've never seen before. So to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. And that really was unfortunate.
Yeah, because there's those people that want to go out and get a job, and they just don't. There's people that have tremendous ability, and there's some people that don't have as much, and they're working just as hard, right? And you want those people to be able to have all the opportunity in the world that everyone else has, and then you get these people that say, well, I make enough money on unemployment that I can stay on unemployment for the rest of my life.
Well, that won't happen. The real problem is people who figured out, how to get 5, 6, 7 unemployment checks at once, right? By defrauding the system. And so, the generous benefits that we had during COVID, for the most part, they've been retracted. And unemployment's pretty low. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, in California, but the cost of living is really severe. And the housing deficit creates a situation where too many people are forced, even if they wanted to buy, they can't. So they're renting. And as I'm sure you tell people on your show, you'd much rather be paying for a mortgage than paying rent. And what we need to do is figure out how to get as many people into home ownership in California as a result of good jobs that get them there. And that's one of the things that I and my colleagues are working on.
I'm sure it's a real challenge, because everything you try and write to help people, and I don't agree with the vast majority of, what our legislature does here in California, but I believe that the people there, everyone's trying to do something good for people. We just have different ways of trying to get about it. You're up there, so you probably see it more than I do, whether that's true or not. But
I mean, I think it is true. I think it is true, and it's part of it's a function of, this is a really big and diverse state, and part of it is kind of where we start, where I started when I got elected, and it is a really challenging thing. Is how do we make California less regulated? How do we make California more hospitable to risk takers, to businesses? It's something we're working on, but at the same time, we're dealing with kind of a status quo that relates to bigness, for want of a better term. And it's a real, it's that kind of cliche about turning around an aircraft carrier. It's a hard thing to do.
It's challenging, especially when you can't go to half the country. I mean, that's a different story. So let's talk about transportation. So, and this is kind of one of the things I do joke about this all the time, especially we've talked about, there's been conversation about a gas tax rebate or rebates. And you look at it and say, well, why does the guy that can afford and has the Tesla, why does he need a gas tax rebate? And I think all of us want clean transportation, but I think I just read, and maybe stats better than me, that we've got 1% of the cars on the road are electric vehicles. Yet we're already talking about having to cut back on electric usage.
So that stat is actually, I think, the national stat.
Right.
In California, I think it's closer to 10% now.
10% of people have electric vehicles?
Yeah. Okay. But the governor, through an executive order in 2019, sort of established the goal of getting California to shift completely by 2035 to non-internal combustion engines, right? Cars that don't use gasoline or diesel. And that's a really ambitious target, right? So, you do that with carrots and sticks. And one of the carrots are kind of the incentives that you see for electric vehicles. So you can get a rebate, you get a sticker to be in the HOV lane, the carpool lane. But we're also the stick is that we're not going to let manufacturers sell internal combustion engines by 2035. So to get from here to there is a real challenge, and it's going to take some imagination, some creativity. One sector that I'm very involved in is in addition to electric cars, there's a technology called fuel cells that use hydrogen to create power using a little mini power plant in your car. And that is another promising space for people to move to non-gasoline powered cars. Hydrogen is a clean fuel. It burns clean. The power generated is like an electric car. You can fill up at a gas station. But what we have to do right now in order to make that market possible is to build out the infrastructure so that if you buy a hydrogen car, you can go fill it somewhere near your house. And so that's one of the things I'm working on right now.
So now I'm a full disclosure. I have trouble even spelling science. So I have no clue about science. But when I have looked at science, it seems to me that hydrogen, isn't that pretty volatile or explosive?
This is the old Hindenburg problem. So hydrogen burns, it's combustible, but the way it's used in fuel cell vehicles, it's actually via a catalyst. It's converted to electricity, leaving behind only water, H2O as the byproduct. But, we all have that image of the Hindenburg in Edison, New Jersey, blowing up. And the truth is that the Hindenburg burned, but the stuff blowing up wasn't the hydrogen. It was all it was the paint on the superstructure of the dirigible. And so hydrogen is combustible in the same way that gasoline is combustible. But your hydrogen car won't blow up, right? Even if you're hit from behind. At least I hope not, because I own one.
Okay. Yeah, I was concerned, because like I say, I know nothing about science. I mean, I think when I was at Chapman, it was geology of national parks.
Well, good for
you. That was about as much as I could figure out.
You almost got 4 degrees. So that's awesome. So the real challenge with hydrogen is producing enough of it and bringing the cost down so that it competes with gasoline.
Is it expensive?
It currently is expensive, right? Just because there's a lot of competition for resources, and we need to build the infrastructure. So it's comparatively more expensive. If you buy a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, you'll get a gas car that'll have $15,000 worth of credit. So it won't cost you anything for about 3 years, and that's part of creating incentives so that the market will respond and bring the cost down of hydrogen fuel production.
So where would I even go to find a fueling hydrogen station? I guess. I mean, I can't call it a gas station.
So there's about 53 in California. I think 54 as of last week that are open. They're co-located with gas stations, right? So one of the challenges with electric cars is you have to charge it, right? So depending on what you do and where you live, that can be really challenging. If you live in an apartment, it's often hard to get 240 volt power to charge your electric car, even if you could afford it. They're expensive. Or if you work in a profession where you can't afford to stop for 2 hours, right? You're working construction or deliveries. So this other technology is actually really promising. And I have a bill, it's SB 1329, that would provide additional monies to build out the retail infrastructure for hydrogen, which is to say putting more hydrogen pumps co-located at gas stations, so that as that market gets bigger, there's a couple car manufacturers that actually have cars. There's the Toyota Mirai, there's the Honda Clarity, there's a Hyundai Nexo that use hydrogen. So if you can get it easily, you're more likely to look at the vehicle. If it's available, car manufacturers are more likely to produce more of those and sell more of those.
Yeah, 53 stations in a state the size of California. That's you got to really do some serious map questions.
So it is true. Now they're all within 7-8 miles. I live in Fullerton, within a radius of like 20 miles. There's about 6 stations. So it's getting better, right? But you can imagine in like 1910, it was a challenge to get refined petroleum for all these newfangled horseless carriages. We did that,
but we've had 100 years of that. Now we've got to get all this done in the next 13.
Yeah, and so again, we make aggressive goals in California, but as a backdrop, there is a problem, right? Climate change is real, but probably more importantly, energy costs, right, which we've seen with the Ukraine war, we are really subject to foreign oil shocks in California. We don't produce enough oil. in California to be self-sufficient. Moreover, people don't want to, and that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, separate conversation.
I think Texas wants to produce more, but
Well, no, that's fair. And so, but that not sustainable over time. So these new technologies do offer promise. The question is, how do we kickstart them?
it's great information. We never have enough time, but I appreciate you coming in. We've got a great conversation. I love the idea of you coming in and sharing with our audience and educating us. We all learn something all the time of new things by having access and availability. So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing some time.
Every 7 years, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly.
I
7 years
appreciate
ago.
the invite.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And as always, I ask you set that first radio preset button to come back here and join Ron Siegel Radio, where we only speak about items affecting your house and your bank account. Thanks to all of our sponsors. A big thanks to Josh and Sean who are engineering us today. And of course, a special thanks to you for spending a little bit of your day with us. That's all for Ron Siegel Radio. Again, if you have any questions or to meet any of our guests, call me anytime, 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990, or ronsiegelradio.com. And remember, make a lot of money so you can help a lot of people and have a lot of fun. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time on Ron Siegel Radio.